Okay. That's right, thank you. Board Secretary, would you please bring us back from executive session?
Thank you, Madam President. I move we return from executive session, noting that we did not discuss anything not noted on the agenda,
And no action was taken.
and no action was taken.
Thank you very much. Like to introduce the interpreter.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, audience. My name is Alma Bejar, and I will be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar y voy a hacer las traducciones en español. Si gustan mi asistencia, voy a estar hacia atrás. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias. Then we have board announcements. Do we have any board announcements? All right, let's move on to superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, audience. I'd like to introduce our Deputy Chief Information and Strategy Officer. This is an interim position, as you know, that Elias Bernardino is resuming the HR position as we transition, get someone new on, train the new person. I didn't want to lose time. And so I'm happy, and I think he's here. Carlos Martinez, if you'd like to stand. Carlos comes to us with over 30 years of experience in education, particularly in teaching and assessment of English learners. He has worked for the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. in various roles for 17 years. Most recently, he was on special assignment to the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. Before that special assignment, he was Division Director in the Office of English Language Acquisition and Group Leader for Standards Assessments in the Office of Elementary Secondary Ed. He was Assistant Secretary of Ed in New Mexico Public Ed Department, where he led Assessment and Accountability Division. During his tenure, that New Mexico was rated A and ranked 16th in the nation in assessments and accountability by Quality Counts. And he has an MA from Tulane University in sociology and an MS in bilingual and multicultural education from the University of Miami, and a BA in sociology from Florida International University. He has also served on committees for various professional organizations, including chair of the NCME Minority Issues Committee, and he received the 2016 Outstanding Achievement Award from the National Association of Assessment Directors for his work on the federal peer review process and his advocacy for appropriate assessment of English language learners and students with disabilities. So I think he's going to be a great addition in that office, in the Accountability and Strategy Office. So welcome, Carlos. Next, I'd like to introduce the Aspen Community Magnet School Choir performing Como Te Llamas. Is it truly by Mike Wilson? Why does it say that there? Is that who's? Mike Wilson is my husband's name. I looked at that and I was like, is that a mistake? Welcome in the Autumn by Teresa Jennings, y Los Colores de la Vida by Mike Wilson. And Lynn Osborne is their magnificent instructor, and so we're in for a special treat. Should I go ahead and get started? Yes. Madam President, members of the board, last meeting we recognized a number of individuals who assisted us with the back-to-school bash. However, one individual, Judy Reinhardt, was unable to be here, yet she was instrumental in the success of the event. Therefore, I would like to recognize Ms. Reinhardt at this time. If she could come forward, please. And just maybe take a picture if you'd like to join me. Madam President, that includes my updates.
Thank you. Moving on to public forum, Captain Gremlin.
Board President Price, we have one speaker this evening, so I'll read the public forum ground rules. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please don't discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. And finally, please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Our speaker this evening is Ms. Kristen Johnson.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board, and everybody else who's here. I'm Kirsten Johnson. I know some of us know one another. I'm technically retired from Santa Fe Public Schools. Up till last year, I've been the librarian at DeVargas Middle School and the department head for the librarians in the district, which is, of course, an unpaid position. All of last year, I'd been trying to get in to talk about the state of the libraries in Santa Fe Public Schools and didn't ever get invited, and finally I just said, I'm just going to go as a public forum and give my presentation. As you can see, the state of the libraries is pretty sad. We're at risk of losing the only funding we have, which is the state GO bond. The state GO bond was never intended to be the only funding. Other school districts that eliminated the rest of the budget have lost the GO bond also. It was supposed to be a supplement to improve the libraries across the state that were already suffering. And Santa Fe Public Schools decided to make them worse by eliminating the district budget. So you can see in the top chart the average copyright date. And I'm using copyright date because that was the data that I could get easily. The average copyright date has been increasing significantly, and this only begins in 2008 because that's when I have the data. We don't have any, we didn't have the ability to get this kind of data before 2008, but the budget was cut before that. At the end, it seems to be improving. That's only because two new schools opened that got opening day collections. And what I need to say about those is that Nina Otero, they received an opening day collection, and when the books arrived, the teachers said, "We don't have anything for the classroom," and took those books into the classrooms, which is a great place. They should be there, but they should have been checked out. There is no record of those books, and many of those teachers have left, and we have no idea where those books are. So we're talking about almost half the collection is not in that library, and this was a big investment financially. On the bottom chart, it shows the impact. It happens differently when you have a professional librarian. The top line is Santa Fe High School. The quality went down when they lost their professional librarian, and at the end, you can see that improved after they had a professional librarian, which is a position they eliminated this year. Capitol High School kind of did the opposite. They all started out with the same kind of level, and they had a professional librarian who brought up the quality. In these graphs, up is bad. I'm sorry, that's kind of the way it comes. Up, the higher the, thank you.
Thank you. Moving up from public forum to union update. Grace Mayer?
I'm sorry, Madam President. I mean, that we had one speaker. I just felt like she was right in the middle of a sentence, and I was, No, I understand, and I thank you so much for respecting that, because so seldom people,
That's right.
most often people do not respect it, and they have, but I wouldn't mind hearing. I mean, it's not like 10 more minutes of text, is it?
No, I'm not going to read what's here.
We have to come there. Is that okay, Madam President? If we can just finish the thought?
Yes.
It has to be from the podium because we have to have it as a record, and thank you.
I felt the same way.
Thanks.
So again, back to that bottom small graph. Capitol High started with no professional librarian. Once they hired a professional librarian, the quality improved, and then they no longer have a professional librarian, and the quality of the collection is directly related to whether or not there's a professional at the site. And that's not reflected in the overall collections in the district because the trend is towards hiring people who are not qualified for the position.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the superintendent on this real quick. Do we partner with the City Hall and the City Library Commission on maintenance of just how they might be able to help?
Not that I know of, but
Just curious.
I doubt that they would,
Right.
just because of how they keep their collections. But I have met, last year last year I met with the librarians who were leaving from DeVargas and Capshaw, and concerned about the new collection and what was going to happen. This is something that as we bring to you a proposal around budgeting, and we have site-based budgeting and all that great, site decision-making, but, if we decide that there's a basic program that we think every school should have, it's a conversation that we need to look at and what it would cost and for us to get there. I tend to be on the side of wanting librarians, but when schools want to save money, they go with library assistants. You don't get the same quality, no offense to the library assistants. Sure, they do a fine job with the training that they have, but I am at a quandary as to how to better fund libraries. And so that is a major concern, and have not really come up with a good solution for that.
And I would just continue, I just want to make sure that with Milagro, when the facility is built out and we're opening the front doors, that a couple weeks before, and I'm sure it's the principal have that eye on it, that we don't have teachers rating the new library collection to take to their classrooms.
Well, and that concerns me about what I heard around Nino Otero.
Yeah, thanks.
So anyway, we'll follow up on that.
Oh, sorry.
I guess, yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Maybe Superintendent, you could get back to us. I'm concerned that if our major high schools don't have librarians, I mean, I always assumed that was a position that needed to be, you know, I mean, I can understand at the elementary level, but for sure, our middle schools through high schools, and especially in high school, who's going to help these kids do research, quality research papers that they need? So just something.
Again, it
that-
goes back to the notion of whether we believe in site-based budgeting or not, and what, to what levels do we want to allow them to site-based budget. And so I agree with you, but that went contrary to my directive, or what I thought was my directive from the year before.
Secretary Noble?
Thank you, Madam President. As you probably recall, and just for the benefit of the rest of the board and the superintendent, we had quite a substantive and long discussion in board review about libraries. And to Board Member Carrillo's point, the city has recently approved and begun a strategic plan for its libraries, which may offer an opportunity for some partnership and interface. And I believe Ms. Sink and Mr. Grunler were on that and thinking about it. But we did spend quite a bit of time talking about it, President Price and I and the staff in board review.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that this has given me heartburn and dismay since I've been on this board. When I was at Santa Fe High School, there were 2 full-time master's degrees, librarians with master's degrees in library science and an aide. And when I was at Capitol High School, there was a full-time librarian. That is not the case anymore. And the condition of both of those libraries dismays me. But I also understand what Dr. Garcia is saying. And I don't know how long we as a society are going to continue to not value books, not value the people who service our students, and unfortunately that means putting money where your mouth is. And I don't know how we accomplish that, but I'm going to continue to work on this. Vice President
Maybe
Cashman.
just listening to the comments up here, maybe we should make it a priority that we are going to fund the libraries in our budget, in the next budget. At least at the high schools, I can't see that we can do without a certified librarian, not a librarian assistant, but somebody that is trained in. And the other thing, I'm sure we could get, with Nino Otero, if all those books have, you know, got into the classrooms, that's good that they're being used, but whenever we bring in a new collection, I'm surprised we didn't barcode those books so we could track those books, you know, and so maybe when we open up Milagro in the new library, that's a good job for volunteers, you know. Volunteers like to do some of those things, and I know I worked as a volunteer over at DeVargas when I first came into town, and that's how I paid for my college, was being in the library. So maybe we can try to figure this out before budget starts.
Yeah, and if, when the new collection comes in, they really should be in the library and they should be checked out, because if parts of a library go to a classroom, it's only serving that classroom as opposed to all the students of the, so we can't put the horse back in the barn, but we can maybe, the next horse coming down, we can keep in the barn. Thank you. Moving on, it really is your turn.
Thank you. Grace Mayor, NEA Santa Fe President, and our teacher at Milagro Middle School. As you know, I've also been bringing this to the attention, the issue about libraries and qualified librarians for the last few years to the school board. Right now, I can tell you one of our librarians asked for a leave and then was replaced by an aide. However, I think that I don't believe that position was necessarily cut, but I mean, we can look into it in terms of Santa Fe High to see if that person's coming back to that same position in a year, or if we can replace it with someone who does fundamentally know how to guide students through research. And that's something that it was a discussion primarily around getting one-to-one computers with students in middle and high school. But that research knowledge has to be taught by someone. And it's not taught by the technology people, and it's not taught by the content teachers. It's taught by the librarian. And so that's why those people have to be licensed, and also the more advanced degrees they have, the better, because then they know the ways to get students to areas where they can research papers and other things. So I'm glad that the board is looking into funding our libraries. I also want to mention that our NEA Santa Fe has grants, community outreach grants, for any new teachers, especially bilingual teachers. We want to promote literacy, so if you would like to request like us to help support a classroom set or some other books for your classroom, please just write me a letter and ask the executive board to help fund that. And we've done that throughout the district. We fund lots of different things. Our primary focus with that money was to try to get more books in the classroom, especially for our new teachers and our teachers who may not have books in Spanish that they need for bilingual students. So I'm happy to help with those efforts. My update is really to just inform the board that the district met with us about the level 2 grievance regarding the transportation employees and heard the grievance, and we're hoping for a response this week, although technically they have 10 days. We also met in bargaining and came to a tentative agreement on our digital learning coaches. And we're hoping to sort of finalize some of those. I still need some information that I was waiting on about placement of our current employees on those. The pay scale and some of their working conditions, we need to, we were kind of just making sure the document was similar to what we currently have in the CBA. Most of the content is there, or what we've agreed upon. So hoping to finalize that in a few days. I don't know if the board has seen that, but I think that it was a mutual kind of agreement that with the understanding that these employees are really important in terms of what they provide to the educators in the building, and also just the maintenance and kind of maintaining the computers for students. And we look forward to having them as part of our bargaining unit. And in the past, there was so few of them that we didn't really sort of gather them together until now. But we're happy to join with them to support our students, and with them to also, they have two roles. One is to support teachers in using technology, and most of them are educators with a lot of experience in doing that. And I can tell you from personal experience that that is a particularly really good quality to have been a teacher, so that they can teach the teachers who really want to present something to their students in a particular way, because they can tell us how to do it more than a technician can that's just a computer kind of guy, IT person. So I have to tell you that I'm learning a lot more from that type of individual in terms of my professional development, how to use technology, and I hope that our other teachers are as well. That is it for my update.
Thank you. Just because I want to, I just need to say this. there's a district in Mississippi that just pulled To Kill a Mockingbird from their reading list. Is that obscene or what? Thank you for letting me vent. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
A second.
That was good. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm loving this. Let's move on to board update and follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Creel?
Just that the teach-in received the television and print press that it did made it a rousing
Yes.
success. I mean, whether it had been 15 people or 200, it would have been the same amount of print, and it would have been the same ridiculous comments from the secretary, how he values input, and why don't we just ask for a meeting? And of course, he didn't even show up to the hearing on Monday. But the
And it
teaching...
made it on all 3 networks.
Yeah, but the teaching was quaint, is the word I would use. And it was Maria von Trapp, I'll take that role, maybe with 3 times the von Trapp family. But it was really nice, just being on the lawn. And I got to tell you, the scientists that were there were exceptional in speaking on all of the different areas of expertise. And then Rabbi Neil Amswich spoke, of course, and I understand he spoke very forcefully at the hearing.
He did.
And he showed me what he was going to be reading, and I was like, "Grr," just right, you know.
And he made it on all 3 networks.
He tends to do that. And but it was wonderful, and we just have to keep this story alive. As much as we know sometimes the administration is prone to do what it's going to do regardless of public input, we just can't let this be secondary and tertiary and just fall away from the headlines, because that would just be really detrimental to your kids. But it was great fun. We'll have to do another teach-in sometime.
And I've been watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and the first teach-ins were in 1964. So, Secretary Noble.
And just as a brief follow-up on that point, all 3 networks also noted there was a pretty large crowd, even though the room was incredibly small. My husband, who's a scientist, was among them, who took the day off from his job at Los Alamos National Labs and waited in line to speak. And not one speaker spoke in favor
Not one.
of the proposed changes. And on another topic, the first community meeting for the strategic plan took place last night. Board Member Carrillo and I both attended, and it was wonderful. Given Dr. Garcia's illness, she was not there, but Jeff Gephardt and Joseph did an exceptional job in running the meeting, and it was really great. And in particular, the table I was at, and I think the other tables, from what I heard, the last item on the agenda, which was suggestions for a new strategic plan, was very rich. I gave Mr. Gephardt a hard time that we didn't spend enough time on the attributes of a Santa Fe Public School graduate, but that was also, and it worked in a pretty rapid-fire way, actually, but it was also a really rich discussion, and I'm really looking forward to the next 2 meetings on the strategic plan, and hopefully we'll get more community input during those meetings as well.
And on that point, for those that can't attend some of those meetings, we will aggregate all the information raw, so you have it, but then also we'll categorize it so that you can kind of see the themes that are coming out of these meetings.
Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's update and follow-up.
Well, you will be pleased to know, since I wasn't here last week, I am behind on my homework, so I will give you my updates from questions that you may have had from the previous board meeting next time. I apologize.
I'm glad you got some R&R.
Great time with my grandkids.
And for those of you who don't know, she spent a week with her grandchildren in New York City, and now she knows why my mother is 88 years old. She said they walked at least 7 miles a day. Moving on to presentations.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. our first presentation tonight, and I think we have a few people. Do we have anybody here, Jeff, that was from the, that worked on, helped us? Yay, we have some of our committee members here. How many people would you say we had at our, that last meeting when we worked on the Project North Star? About 20, 25? Grace was there also.
I'm sorry, Board President Price, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. There were about 24 that we knew that signed in, but there were some that were kind of sneaking in, and then a few had to leave early, and so there was probably about 24 to 30.
So we had representatives from all various role groups. We did invite a few more teachers because they typically don't get a voice in a lot of this stuff. So we did have, I think, a little over-representation from teachers, but I think every constituency was represented. And thank Ms. Noble for coming and sharing her thoughts. And so what, it says here we had 3 parents, 5 community members, 6 teachers, 2 principals, 6 district staff, 1 board member, and 1 superintendent. And then again, others that did not sign in. And this is what we got. I thought we only wanted, this is what we had. This was our working set that cabinet just worked on to, just sort of start the conversation. And where we ended was with 7, and they're in front of you. And these guiding principles include expectations for all students, families, educators, staff, and community. We believe in championing public education, that students are at the heart of what we do, in creating strong and committed connections among students, staff, families, and community, in high expectations for all, in celebrating our diversity in a nurturing and safe environment. Successful schools are engaging, collaborative, joyful, and inspiring, and in ethical leadership. And that was hard work. It was not easy to get to that, right, Grace? But I think, for those of you that were there, I really appreciate you all, and if you want to make any comments, you're welcome to. But it was a collaborative process. We actually used a formal consensus building process, and this was wordsmithed up till the last minute, I would say, was it not? So I think a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into getting this accomplished. And we went a little overtime, I think, to get it done, but it was well worth it, and I really thank those of you that came tonight. And if you want to add anything, you're more than welcome to. Would you like to? Yeah, just go ahead and go to the podium if you would. Yeah.
Okay, hi. I'm Lynn Heffron, and I was able to participate last night in the strategy planning as well as last week with North Star. I just wanted to thank you, first of all, as well, because pizza and drinks were provided. Thank you to keep us alive and going. I thought that the community representation at both of these meetings was exemplary. I know I met people from across the spectrum of the district and all of the schools and other community members, and I would like to applaud that outreach to the community and others to participate in the kind of evaluations and proponents of improvement to the system that you are now making. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Jeff, how many meetings did we have to get up to this from all the data that we pulled together? Do you remember?
There were
Approximately?
approximately 6. We had a parent meeting, we had a community partner meeting, we had principals, directors, teachers, students, board. So approximately 6, 7.
Yeah. So, and then this was the culmination. So anyway, this is where we're at. We'll bring this to the strategic plan as you work on this, and everything will be adopted, I think, as a whole, however you choose to do that.
Any comments from board members? Okay, moving on.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all for all of the work you've been doing on this. This is impressive.
And next, turned off my microphone. Thank you, Jeff. Next, Christie, we have the Milagro Construction update, our Chief Operations Officer.
Good evening, Board President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. I have a joint presentation this evening with our Deputy Superintendent Linda Sink. This is in regards to the Milagro Middle School new construction, but also some recent studies and advancement in the area of their temporary campus. So the new school construction, the project has gone out to bid. I should emphasize that the new school, the Yano Street campus, is being built currently as we speak, because the first phase of the project is actually the demolition. We're near complete. The second phase will be the dirt work, which a different contractor will come in and grade the site to where we want to start the building. And so we are out to bid for the general contractor who will build out the site after these two other contractors do the demolition and the dirt work. Those bids from the general contractor are due October 26th. The dirt work is set to begin immediately after the demolition is complete. And we have, I'm going to go ahead and click through this and pull it up. But we have had some sort of evolution in our thinking about the strategy on the construction of this new middle school. And primarily this is coming from our project manager, Leo Preneveau, and our architect, thinking that though it's possible to build this new school for our middle schoolers in 12 months, with construction beginning late fall, really December almost, by the time that general contractor will be on board. We want to evaluate a couple of options, and one is the original 12-month build-out, but two is comparing our price and our bids on a 14-month build-out. So our experts in the field are really telling us, looking at the drawings, you advance the project, your knowledge of the project as you move forward, but looking at the drawings and looking at the work ahead of us, folks are telling us this is really a 14-month build. So when people in the industry tell us that, well, we want to know if there's a price difference. Of course there is, for doing the project in 1 year versus 14 months. So obviously then our conversation will have to evolve around when is the best time of year to move Milagro middle schoolers to their new home. If in fact the best price on the project and the best quality is a 14-month build, that would put us more into February or March, right, if we're starting in around December. And so these are conversations we want to start having now, even if it is, we get a really great price and a contractor who says, no problem, we can do this in 12 months and we can do it in your budget. Is that the best time of year to move the middle schoolers and the staff to their new campus? So some possible dates of relocation to the Yano Street campus. We have up here December 2018 is relatively too ambitious in my opinion. It would be January or August, because if we're done any time after December, does it really make sense to move in February, March, April of a school year? These are conversations I'll have with Linda Sink, with the school site staff, and we're certainly willing to hear your input and thoughts on that timing. We just want to start talking about it as we're getting closer to having the general contractor on board. When we bring the general contractor contract to you in November, it will be very clear if it's been bid as a 12-month job, a 14-month job, and the cost associated with it. So that will really be our decision-making point. Let's see what happens next.
Board Member Carrillo?
Ms. Magner, is that going to go to the CRC before it then comes to us?
I think looking at the meeting calendar, we were discussing that, Board President Price and Board Member Carrillo, we were discussing that today in our team meeting. Looking at the calendar and the available meetings coming up this next month, it gets a little tricky. And so I think I'd recommend quite the opposite. Based on when the bids are coming in on October 26th, our team, our representative group reviewing those bids, will be done and convening as a committee around the 30th or 31st of October, and determining which contractor we'd like to bring as a recommendation to the board. I would recommend that we hold our regular order of events for November meetings, meaning we come to the board meeting with the recommended contract, and if there are cost implications, that the board direct the CRC to find the money necessary to reprioritize to complete the job. But again, we really don't know what the bids are going to look like. So there might not be any reason to go to the Citizens Review Committee. If the project comes in on budget, we're okay with the 12 or the 14-month calendar offered to us. There might not be another decision-making point whatsoever for the Citizens Review Committee. But we can entertain a different order of events. It's just that's the next available meeting after the committee makes their selection on October 31st.
Could we go back to
Vice-
the, can we go back to the dates? You guys just went off the slide, if you don't mind. No. Which slide,
That's the-
Christie?
He's on it.
No, that's
Yes,
not it.
you can just move it up.
I want the slide, if you can get it down where it shows the 3 dates.
It's this one, but they have to enlarge the page.
Well, anyway, it had, there we go, thank you. You know, one of the things that the board asked, and I've been, really bugging Christie about till she's sick of it, but we really don't know. Like if we knew today, and I could tell you, yes, it's going to be August 2019, so we could tell people as early as possible, but it is possible that it could be done earlier. And I think part of what Linda, I think, is going to address, I guess you were going to address something, huh? Because you're up there, has to do with programming and what makes sense also. So just know that I am very sensitive to what you all have been saying to me, how important it is that our community be aware of what the realities are that we're dealing with, so that they can make the appropriate plans. So I promise you that I will keep an eye on it and continue to irritate people, and but they'll get us the answer as soon as possible. Linda?
Vice
Or
President Cashman?
Back on whether it goes before CRC or not, I think it would be good for it to go to CRC before it comes to the board, even if we have to convene a special meeting of CRC. I just think, they've, especially the group that we have in CRC now, sometimes sees things from a different perspective, and I think it's just good to keep them involved. And I'm glad that, even though the superintendent is coughing to death, I'm glad you brought up, it is very important to, as soon as we know what that schedule looks like for the build, I've been approached by parents and by teachers. They want to know, because they're making decisions, and some of these decisions they need to make in time for the interzone transfers, or we delay that. But, some parents, if it's going to be a long process, they might choose a different school for their kids until Milagro opens up in the new building. So there's just a lot of, and I know you're aware of it, but I think it just needs to be said publicly that there is some concern on the build-out, and, I guess I would rather give less optimistic move-in date than something that's so optimistic that we're constantly moving it back. Let's get the building ready, get our teachers, and even if the building is finished, let's say in January, well, maybe we use that time from January to the new school year to gradually move our staff and let everybody get settled in, instead of, a mid-year move-in could be very disruptive to the education and also to parents that are driving their kids back and forth to school, things all of a sudden, maybe it creates problems for them. So those are just my comments on that.
For the benefit of the public, the CRC is the Citizens Review Committee. Board Member Carrillo?
So what I heard Christie say, though, Ms. Cashman, is that we should just have a regularly scheduled meeting in November, and then if there is an issue of some sort, they'll bring it to us, but that it's not really necessary to have a CRC meeting or to schedule a special one prior to our November 7th meeting here. Now, if there was something glaring that came out, I mean, they would let us know, probably, well, they'd let us know and we'd schedule it. I mean, if something really, but to convene all those people, because that's a lot of people around that table, and so many of them don't show up anyway. But
I just, why
Board Member
I
Cashman?
think it would be important for CRC, you know, if nothing else, as a courtesy to them, that, you know, they put in a lot of time and effort into Milagro, and so, you know, they might want to have an opportunity to say, yeah, you know, everything's going right, and we feel really confident to have it come to the board. So I just want us to really consider that, you know, rather than leaving them out, you know, of the process. Just, you know, it could be a short meeting, but I think we have a lot of very interested citizens on that committee that would, you know, like to weigh in.
For the benefit of the general public, 2 board members sit on the CRC, and they are Vice President Cashman and Board Member Carrillo. We can't have more than 2 board members at any meeting at any given time, because when you have more than 2, you have a quorum and you have to have an open meeting.
Shall I go on? Board President Price, shall we go on? Okay. Next slide, please. So we are very aware of the fact that one of the factors really weighing on staff, students, and families is the temporary campus conditions. We've done temporary campuses in various phases and ways across Santa Fe Public Schools over the years, and so we're in tune with the fact that there are some hiccups and growing pains in these spaces. And so given that we understand students will continue to be there and staff for some time, myself and Ms. Sink have visited the campus to tour the school. I've been there with the Executive Director of Special Education to look at some of the special education program issues. I've been there multiple times with Mr. Gabe Romero, our Director of Security, to look at traffic and parking and safety issues. And we have scheduled at the end of this month, on Monday, October 30th, a half day to spend with the Superintendent, our Director of Special Education, Ms. Sink, and myself, to really go have some listening sessions with the staff and the students and see what's happening on the campus that we might be able to address in short order. So what these visits are really about in a graduated aspect, if you'll go to the next slide, Tom, is that we want to address immediate needs, short turnaround needs right away. We want to look for opportunities for longer term improvement, and then look for things that might be an obstacle to optimizing program. So Ms. Sink will talk about some of those strategies and how we're really trying to align the temporary campus with program need, and make this as painless as possible in the short and the long term of their temporary stay, as well as optimizing our new school building. So I'll let Ms. Sink weigh in on some short-term improvements around the instructional program.
While you're waiting or making that transition, I also have visited the school on a couple of occasions and visited a lot of classrooms. But have not really had time to really just sit and talk with teachers, which we hope to do during their lunch hours. And I want to thank Ms. Meyer for bringing some issues to my attention, and you know, planting the seed that we should just go and just spend more time and do a visual, because unless we're actually there, we get varying reports about what's happening, you know, and contradictory information about what's happening. And so we hope that being on the ground floor, actually talking to teachers, that we can get to the bottom of some of these issues that continue to percolate. And then what we would like to do as a follow-up from board review is also to have another community meeting with parents in the evening and listen to them and hear their concerns.
Board President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, our goal is to make this environment as absolutely as good as it possibly can, because we have kids that will never go to the new school. So we have to keep working. It's never going to be perfect, but we're not going to give up on making it as quality as we can. And Christy and I have that goal, and I know the superintendent does too, and we are listening, and we're going to go literally listen to individuals on that day, although we've already been talking to many people. And working with Grace, working with other individuals at the school, such as the principal, of course. We've already looked at the high numbers in art in a very small room. What can we do immediately, such as moving lockers over to the wall near her building, near her room, so that kids aren't pulling in all of their materials and their books and whatnot into a very small room where they, you know how art kids are, they're going to be moving around. Into putting a cabinet at least at the top so she can move things off of the floor. It's not an optimal situation since there's not truly 2 art classes in that building. So Christy has that on board. And also looking, as she probably already mentioned, even moving to another room or blowing out a wall. So they're doing that study now to help. In this case, is Grace's room. We looked at it ourselves, and it would be very difficult to run an art program there. As for PE, we had to level that and added another class for PE. For special education, this situation's always tough. I had the same problem as a principal in high school where you're using all of your rooms, and so when you have a prep, other teachers move in that prep and use that room. I did that as a teacher myself. It's not fun and it's not easy. So we're trying very hard to figure out what to do. The other thing that might happen with a portable is to bring in 2 new classrooms at that rate and help the special education teachers in that respect. And then we also have special ed offices all in one large room. Difficulty of that, they don't have the space to talk with kids in a personal atmosphere, so that's tough. But it's all on our radar. It's everything that we are working with the principal, with Carl. We have tried to help in other ways. We've given extra money for PD. We did staff a new special ed secretary because they had so many special ed students there. There's been other things that we've helped add to that budget to try to help relieve the situation there. As you know, we also looked at and are still looking at, I think, campus aides to help with that situation, and we'll probably bring an update to that as soon as possible. For probably talking in October will give me a better idea on program and where we're going. I know some of the teachers are still worried about their program even for the future, and so that'll give me more ideas on, who do I need to bring to the table to look at programs and work for that 2 years down the road. But again, I'm really worried about now, so I'll be listening to that, but also look for the future in scheduling all programs. We'll be looking at, I don't know if you can go to that next slide, on instructional programs continued. As I discussed a few minutes ago, there's a large number of special ed kids at Milagro, and we're really going to be looking at the transition IEPs. Which I know Julie has that on her radar and working on our kids in the place they need to be and reevaluating those kids. Some may be reevaluated out into high school, into regular ed, and some may move on into program in high school. And even for next year in Milagro, if you have the 7th graders moving on, since we have such a high number, she does have that on her radar as well. So I think with the last point that I've already made is, again, we may need to look at the portable, but as Christy has told me, since we're talking every day, it looks like on these issues that it could still take 2 to 4 months to get the portable, and that's why we're trying to look for short-term situations, especially in the case of art. So I think we stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Next presentation, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Secretary Noble.
Thank you, Madam President. Superintendent, are we realizing operational cost savings already in Milagro? I'm just wondering about the merging of 2 schools and if there was overlap of resources and if we're already realizing that or how it has been handled.
I think that was all factored into the budget, right, when we built the budget. So yes, you have one less principal, et cetera, assistant principal, librarian, whatnot, but all of that was factored when we built the budget.
And what's the library situation there?
And so what?
A specialist?
It's an assistant, right?
Board President Price, members of the board, superintendent, at our K-8s and our middle schools, we have specialists. And we originally programmed for specialists at the high schools, and we're investigating that right now.
But specialists, I mean, to be honest, is our assistants, correct?
It's a teacher, it's a library professional.
Oh, it's a teacher.
Yes, yes,
So they're librarians?
yes.
Okay, at all the Ks?
K-8s, middle schools, and
Except for
supposed to be the high schools.
except for
We'll
the
have to
two
check
high
into
schools?
that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I know there's been some concern about security guards. Is there currently one at the school?
I believe that there's, well, Mr. Romero, your timing was perfect. Is there, are you asking specifically about Milagro?
Board members, president, and specifically, board member or Secretary Noble, there is one at Milagro. We started out with two because it was kind of a large school, a new beginning. So we had two there for up until a few weeks ago, and now they're at one, pretty equivalent to what Ortiz has.
Thank you.
Again, board president, superintendent, and board members, I'm here today to talk to you about a safety program that we're beginning to implement within our school, and I want to talk a little bit about the program itself, the rationale behind it, and what it will look like and how it can help improve our district. So, oh, here we go. So, it's a short presentation, but we will talk about why we should implement it and the components of that program, some considerations and some benefits in regards to it. So, why should we implement it? Well, we have policies and standards, and the policy does require that we implement this program. It's policy 516, I believe. And I think we're at a point where we really need to look at full implementation of this program for the benefit of all staff, all visitors, and all students within our district. As you know, creating a safe environment makes a more productive environment. And there's also residual benefits when you start talking about insurance premiums and a better organization. Now, we've been doing some required training with some of the discipline, bus transportation, custodians, maintenance, and a few others, kitchen staff, for a number of years now, I think going back 5 years. And I think that in itself, just that small attention to those issues and looking at and analyzing what training these people need and bringing that training to them with the help of their directors and coordinating with our department, as you can see, I think that's a big factor in the number of decreased workers' comp claims we've had over the last 5 years. And as you can see, the cost savings in claims is pretty substantial itself too. So, I mean, it just emphasizes the need for us to move forward with a program like this, to fully implement that program. So, some of those essential components that we're starting to put together now is selling this, that it's, and this is part of the reason for having this presentation tonight, is that ownership part of it, that we own it as a district, our safety and our, how we treat our employees, our visitors, and our students in each school, and how we move forward with this type of program. But it has to be comprehensive. It has to be cross-functional across all disciplines. I named some of the disciplines, the bus drivers and the custodians that we were working with. We have a lot of teachers in the district, and they're valuable employees too, and I think they deserve being exposed to a lot of these safety trainings and procedures. So part of that also is creating protocols and regulations, and then this continual training, offering incentives, and then looking at, when we have a lot of accidents or incidents, and even individually looking at the causation of these accidents, Maybe there's some that you can do an analysis and the frequency of those types of accidents and maybe do some training to combat that. Or sometimes it's just a simple fix that goes unnoticed for many, many months or years that could have been resolved if we had done an adequate inquiry at the beginning. Some of the cost considerations, because there's nothing for free, of course, we want to look at is that it will require a few hours of training for all our employees across the district each year. So I look at that as pretty minimal and a good investment, I think. We also need representatives from a cross-section of the district, from the academic side of the district, from the maintenance side, custodial, et cetera, to represent a committee, to have a representative committee that can direct what the safety program should be looking at and how they should be moving forward. And then supervisors and administrators will have to take some extra time to look at things like are our training objectives being met, and ensure that if there is directives and regulations put out to attend a certain amount of training, that their employees do that. And that also looking and investigating into accidents that occur and seeing if there is a cause that could have been a preventable accident that we can take action on and resolve those types of issues. So if we look at this comparison, on the left side, I won't go through all of them. We talked about them just a few minutes ago. But if you look on the right side, if you look at the benefits of that, and I think it's pretty obvious what the right thing to do is, and moving forward with a more comprehensive program is something that we're doing right now. In fact, we're currently developing the administrative regulations to support this program. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Vice President Cashman?
I like the briefing, and we talked about it at board review. I just want to remind you, when it comes time to budget, you make sure that you're budgeting for the program that you need, because we've got to keep our students and our staff safe in our schools. So I know I'm just saying, well, I want this, I want this, I want that, I want it all. But, safety is critical, and so make sure that, that you submit the appropriate budget and, defend it. Don't let it get watered down, and remind me when you come up and you say, this is what I need, say, Board Member Cashman, you said safety was number one, and it is. So, I'm a firm believer in safety, and we've got to put that first, because if our staff and our students are not safe, they can't really, do well. They can't learn, if things are happening, and so, number one. Okay.
Thank you. Your comments are very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Board Member Creel.
Thanks, Mr. Romero. No, I think you've done just an excellent job since you've been with the district in improving our safety programs. I just find it kind of humorous is why the first item on the agenda is, why should we have a safety program? Duh. So, and we have a great one, safety program all the way around. But I was just thinking about that. Besides it being a board goal, would we ever, I really hope there's no district out there that doesn't have a safety program, comprehensive. So we can loan you out as a consultant occasionally if you want.
No loaning. They'll have to buy it.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next presentation, the ATC Schematic Design.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Our Chief Operations Officer, as assisted by staff, will be discussing the ATC Schematic Design. And we also believe we have the Executive Director for the ATC is with us today, Susan Lilly.
Good evening again, Board President Price, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia. I have a team here this evening to present to you the ATC Schematic Design. I'll be kicking off that presentation, and then we'll all stand for questions. But as a standard course for all of our general obligation bond construction projects, we bring to the Board of Education projects at the schematic design milestone to show you the work to date, what we have accomplished through committee and community process, and to seek your approval, input and approval on the project. So the Academy for Technology and Classics was prioritized for a general obligation project from the 17 bond. We have Susan Lumley here this evening. She's the school principal. We have James Horn here from Spears Horn Architects. He's a part of the architectural team and has been planning on the project to this point through schematic design. And then Shirley McDougall, our asset manager for Santa Fe Public Schools, is the project manager for the ATC project. We can go to the next slide. So the Academy for the Technology School Construction Project was prioritized through the Citizens Review Committee as a part of the 2017 Facility Master Plan, as I mentioned. The maximum allowable construction dollars for the project are listed here, and the scope of the project is also listed here. So those of you who are familiar with the facility, it was built with just core classrooms and administration. There's no common areas or cafeteria or gymnasium, and so that was a high priority for the school. The way it works with charter schools in publicly owned buildings, they're required to submit a facility master plan of their own to the local school district, and then we can choose to prioritize their project within our facility master plan. So the things you see listed here were prioritized by the school through their facility master plan as the most important improvements to their campus. And that's what we've been studying through the course of this project to date. We can go to the next. The project scope also includes some site work and exterior improvements, driveway ingress, egress. There are a multitude of issues currently on the campus because of, first of all, no separation between the bus and the pickup drop-off parent and student traffic. There is also still a gravel lot, which is something that the neighbors are very anxious for them to improve. So you can see here again in greater detail some of the site conditions that we're trying to address while also adding square footage, new instructional space, science labs, and gymnasiums to the site. We've undergone a similar process with ATC that we do with all of our district construction projects, and that is we brought in an architectural team to do the programming piece, and Ms. Lumley has led her staff in bringing a representative group in to look at the programming for their science labs, for their gymnasium, cafeteria, music classrooms, their exterior spaces. So we take very much a committee approach. She's had parent and staff representatives participating in this process. We've done our part in notifying the neighborhood and the neighborhood association. So we've followed Santa Fe Public Schools neighborhood notification process and held public meetings. We've also vetted the project to date with our architectural team and our construction management team. We're utilizing a new process that brings in all persons in the design process, including engineers, architects, the construction management team, our facility managers, very early in the project. So a multitude of people are looking at this through their lens and saying, will this work going into the future? Is this a smart building? Are we building towards our sustainability design guidelines? Are we building, in a cost-effective manner? And so we've had multiple meetings, I guess somewhere in the dozens or more, involving the various players studying the project. We also recently presented, I think it's been a couple of weeks now, the schematic design to the Citizens Review Committee. And so I go through all of this because I want you to understand that we don't work on these projects in isolation. We go through quite a bit of committee work and community input before we bring the schematic design to you. So I'll call on Ms. McDougall to come up and present the schematic design at this time.
Board Member Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. This is, the first slide shows some vignettes of the existing building with the new building. But we'd like to come back to this in a bit and get into more detail. Next slide, please. This is shows the existing conditions of the school. Do we have that little pointer thing? On the very top of the slide is the main road that goes through Rancho Viejo, and they have their own driveway that comes down into the campus, and that shows the existing turnaround and parking area, and then the building, which is arc-shaped. It's a 2-story building. Next slide, please. This slide shows the existing driveway in gray and the proposed new additional drive areas in brown. So you can see additional bus turnaround, additional parking at the top there where Christie is, and that's fire access lanes. And then you can see the new addition in a small piece there on the far left. Next slide, please. This is a blow-up of the addition, and you can see the arcing existing building to the right, which is their school has a large outdoor circulation corridors, which makes every single classroom have an outside door. So that circulation spine would connect to this new building, which is fully enclosed there with doors, and the 2 science classrooms on the top of the slide, and moving down into the bathrooms, and there is a warming kitchen. I don't know if Christy can point to that warming kitchen. And then it's adjacent to this area they're calling the Commons, where there is seating for lunch area, and they will also utilize the outdoor space there for seating for lunch area, as well as their gymnasium during inclement weather. And they will move the bleachers back to the wall, and they'll have additional seating in the wintertime. Yes, okay, good. Next slide. This is a 2-dimensional drawing. A little harder to read than the 3-dimensional drawings. So let's go to the next one, which I think is more explanatory. Actually, one more, please. This is very descriptive. So you can see on the top slide the curving existing building and their existing entrance off to the left. And then you can see in the gray and the lighter tan is the new addition, the science build classrooms plus the gymnasium in the back. And on the middle drawing, you can see how the existing building is 2 stories, and the new building will be 1 story, but will be on the higher level, so it looks down over the courtyard of the existing building. I think that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Questions from the board? Vice President Cashman?
Just a comment for the board. CRC reviewed this schematic design at their last meeting, and everybody was in agreement to move forward.
It's looking good. Now if I can see you. Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work. Board Member Carrillo? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I saw you.
You did see.
Oh, okay.
I'm withdrawing my...
You withdrawing your hand up? Okay. moving on to action items. I thought we did this last week.
This is the second
Oh,
one.
the second reading, okay.
Move to approve.
I second it.
All in favor?
Well, there's no changes, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we get to vote on the ATC Schematic Design. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second, and then a second. And I just wanted to reiterate what Maureen said, and that is that this was brought to us at the Citizens Review Committee. Everyone was very in favor of this proposal. There were really no outstanding, I would say, critical remarks or concerns. And we were just excited as a CRC, as I'm sure we are as a board, to finally be able to do this. Because I know this is something that we've been discussing now since the end of the 2009 bond, construction and design and all that stuff. So it's nice to see this happening for you all.
Nice to see that your students will be able to eat inside. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. All right, selection of the 2030 class celebration. I would like to move that we've had this in front of us a number of times. I would like to move that we accept the bumper sticker and the celebration. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Secretary Noble?
Just wondering if anybody checked in with Board Member Trujillo.
I did.
Okay, great.
I had a conversation with her, and she's in favor of this also. Because this was her, this was her baby, yeah.
So you said bumper sticker and what?
Bumper sticker and the celebration with the class and the high school seniors. Remember we talked about that? Vice President Cash?
I think
Cashman.
it's worth noting that the T-shirts are pretty expensive. And once we start this, we're going to have to do it for all of the classes. So,
Yes.
Even though you came up with some great ideas, if we, it's a cost to the district to continue that because we can't make just this class special just because you were born.
At the right time?
At the right time. So I think that's why, we're, looking at the cost associated with the ideas and saying bumper sticker is something we can do and the celebration is a great idea, so.
And one of the reasons why I didn't include the, kind of like the yearbook that would follow them, that's a logistic nightmare, trying to have that carry through for 13 years. Having tried to do that with portfolios just on the high school level, it was a nightmare. So we didn't want to impose a nightmare on the district.
Gardeners can't really write.
Secretary Noble?
It's moving fast in first grade, though, I can report.
Yes.
And for the celebration, are we talking about transporting kindergarten students to high schools? That's the intention there?
Sometimes it's done that way. I've seen it, and I've seen it done the other way, where the seniors come to the schools.
Which is the option I
Yes.
sort of prefer.
Yes, yes.
So maybe we specify that.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It carries.
Thank you.
Next, Madam President, I'd like to ask Mr. Grendler if he would, our Chief Financial Officer, review for you the resolution for 2017-2018, proposing a joint election in February of 2018 for Santa Fe Public Schools and the Santa Fe Community College.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board President Price, members of the board, in front of you tonight is simply a resolution to approve a joint election in February 2018 between Santa Fe Public Schools and Santa Fe Community College, meaning we would be on the same ballot as the county education election ballot and would share costs. So there's some discussion about how the statute was changed in 2015. This actually wasn't possible for us to do this. And so we have done this with the community college twice, both times for board elections on their part in 2015 and 2017. This time they have their general obligation bond in front of the voters. And in their resolution, I just wanted to make it crystal clear on top of the cover sheet, there's a small mill levy increase in their resolution for their GO bond. However, they have some bonds which are retiring. So net of everything, there is no tax increase for the community college. So both their general obligation bond and the SB 9 2 mil ask of the voters to approve that for another 6 years are continuations and do not involve any tax increases. So tonight, what we're just asking for in the name of transparency and awareness is that we resolve to have a joint election with the community college. They've asked for that as well, and they'll go back once we resolve and complete an analysis with Ms. Yonda's staff on the election sites that would be optimal for the community. They will change their resolution to have the same election sites. Both of those would be filed with the county, and we're bringing our resolution and proclamation for the election in front of the board on November 7th. Both those would be filed with the county with the same election sites, and therefore we'd be able to share the costs.
Any questions from the board? Secretary Noble, and then Board Member Carrillo.
Do we have any idea if what you just said will be made clear on the ballot, i.e. that there's no tax increase?
The ballot question does not include that. So it basically asks for the amount, or in our case, the mill rate.
I thought so. Thank you.
So it'll be an educational campaign that both the community college and the district will have.
Board Member Carrillo.
And this is only for the February election in 2018. This doesn't cover anything else beyond, correct?
Board President Price, Member Carrillo, that's correct.
May I have a motion?
Sure, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Yeah. In piggybacking on what Kate said, really have to make sure in this PR campaign on this one that they know there's no increase. Because the way it reads on the SFCC side, people could say they just increased our, because we did and they approved it and we're very grateful. So just, emphasizing the importance of that for us.
And we've already started mapping out our education campaign. We've already started that work, kind of what needs to be done when. Right now, we're reviewing all of our data, make sure all of our information's accurate that we have on our website and whatnot.
Good.
Vice President Cashman?
Well, I know we've done very well getting the message out to our voters. Are we going to coordinate a little bit with Santa Fe Community College so we're all talking the same message and that it's not an increase for the voters, because that's really important,
And I'm
especially
sure
in
they're
this
going
climate.
to probably want to make sure they do that as well. They do have a new president, but I will be meeting, or interim president, and I will be meeting with her shortly. But absolutely, we can also save money on the education. That would be great as well.
Any other comments? Okay. Yeah. All right, so we've had a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? No opposition, it passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to board discussion. First one is the resolution guidelines with Vice President Cashman.
We couldn't act on this at the last meeting because we didn't have possible action. So I just wanted to make it clear what everybody was looking at, so that's why I put it on the agenda. But basically, it's just a timeline, so we're not bringing up board resolutions that haven't been fully prepared, and so then the community knows.
Since it says possible action, we can take action on this. Do I have a motion?
I moved to approve it.
I second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? There is no opposition, and so it passes. Now we have to talk about the District 4 board member application process. Not so much the application process, they've already applied, but how are we going to come up with the questions that for our interview? And how are we going to handle that interview?
So you're referring to when we meet?
When we interview, for the interview.
Just.
Not the forums.
Not the forums.
The
okay.
forums, the questions will come from the community. Yeah, so we're running out of time here.
We're in a quandary.
Yes, we are.
Because how do we have to be in an open meeting.
Yes. I
We don't
know.
want to give them the
questions ahead of
in
time.
advance.
I know.
So they-
That's a conundrum.
Can we just tell them to shut their ears and, no, I don't know. No, it's a
Well,
serious.
one of the things I've been thinking about is, two of us can get together and come up with questions, okay? And another thing we can do is we can ask one candidate to sit in the conference room with an escort, so that, since it has to be an open meeting, they don't, just watch on their cell phone or their whatever device they use and hear all the questions that we're asking the first person, because that's not fair. That's something to think about, too. Vice President Cashman and then Board Member Carrillo.
I would like to limit the amount of questions.
Yes.
So maybe the easiest thing to do is for each board member to develop 2 questions, and then, 2 questions, and then if somebody already has, if we're all saying the same questions, it must be pretty good, and we don't have to ask more. But I would just, if we each come up, and then we can just rotate, down, but the same question that we ask one candidate has to be asked to the other candidate, so we're consistent and we're equitable.
Are you suggesting that the candidates, both candidates be present at the same time?
Well, I had suggested that before, but that's my sensing is that's not the pleasure of the board. I don't have a problem listening to them, but, hearing, it's not like an exam,
No, it's not.
And so I don't see that it's a problem, but I know that the rest of the board didn't feel that way, so, but I would just say develop 2 questions. I mean, I already know what my 2 questions are.
I suggest that that you develop more than 2 questions in case we have, and then we can get rid of duplicates. Board Member Carrillo.
I think we should have 3 questions. And then we have 2 people from the board meet and go through what would essentially be 15 questions. Yeah, because she'll be interviewing too. Yeah, 15 questions and narrow it down or combine as necessary. I like the idea. I think they definitely should be not present for one another's interview, because while it's not an exam, it really does give the second person a really big advantage. And then I don't necessarily think they need an escort. They can just, I know, okay. I didn't know if you were serious or not, but, okay. So, yeah, because if we don't trust them, then they should just forget it. Yeah, forget about it. Okay,
I'm sorry, sometimes my sense of humor can be a bit dry.
that's cool. Maureen, would 3 questions be okay? And because we wean it down, the 2 people that are on the...
How do we get, well, first of all, let's pick the 2 people who would work on these questions. I would like to be one.
I'd like to be one.
All
I
right.
usually never volunteer for different things like this, but I don't
All
have
right.
time, but...
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we will have to get together
Okay.
and we'll, now how are you all going to get the questions to us?
We'll get them to the super duper.
Okay, and then you will get them to me. Is that fair enough? Yes,
Yeah.
well, that's what I mean, the both of us.
Or we could just send them to Ms. Behar and keep the superintendent out of the process and let her do some other things.
Doesn't matter how she does it,
But, well,
That's-
we don't direct her.
yeah. How she
Well,
does it
kinda
is
do.
her
Well,
business.
it is our board.
She is our secretary,
Our
yeah.
secretary, too.
Yeah.
Excuse me, can you run and get a
Yeah.
latte? No, just kidding.
All right, so let me see if I have this down. You and I are going to meet.
Yes,
We're going to go over the questions that we are going to get from the superintendent.
correct.
We're going to pick 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 questions? That's too many.
No, he was saying of 15, I think that's about right, you pick
10, all right.
15 to start with.
Well,
Yeah, maybe narrow it down.
we'll see.
We'll see.
You'll see, we'll see.
We'll see how we
Okay.
feel.
Does that sound good to everybody?
And what we'll do also, we have the right to, edit the questions and combine if there's.
Yes.
I mean, but we're not going to go crazy.
And get rid of duplicates and things like
Yeah.
that.
And then.
I'm loving this.
I had another thought around that.
Yeah, so we have to set a date. Yes, we have to set a date. Today is the 17th.
Oh, the date that you and I meet?
Yeah, we have to have a date that we meet, but before that, they have to get the questions. So we
Oh,
need a
date,
deadline for the
questions.
questions and then a date when you and I meet.
What's today?
Today is the 17th.
Why don't we, how hard can it be?
It's not gonna
actually,
be
I have
hard.
all my questions done already.
It's not going to be hard.
What if we have to submit them to Alma by Thursday at 5? This Thursday at 5?
Can we do it by Monday?
Yeah,
Seriously,
because
come on, you just have to write down some
we have-
questions.
We have 2 community meetings, and we have, I think Monday is fine with me.
Okay, and then when do?
Okay, so the questions come in on the 23rd.
And you and I can just talk on the phone and decide when we want to meet.
Okay, when we want to get together.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions by 23rd.
Okay. Swell.
Got that?
Well, they do,
Well, I talked to you,
yes. Yeah, we've got it.
and then you talked to them.
Yeah, and also wanted to make sure, it's none of my business, but I'm just going to ask you, because I know you're brainstorming.
Yeah.
You should probably use your mic, though.
Do you need a time, do you want to set a time limit for the interviews?
Well, if it's 10 questions, I would imagine that's at least an hour. No more than an hour.
An hour per candidate.
Yeah. No more than an hour per candidate. How does that sound?
Well, I would like to get through, if we decide it's going to be 8 questions, I'd like to make sure we get through the 8.
That's right.
And if one, they don't have to speechify just for the sake of speechifying. I hope they are
Well,
aware of that.
they're being interviewed. They need to
Yeah.
deal with their time too, even though we don't deal with our time.
So we'll schedule like roughly an hour for each candidate, and if
Yeah.
it goes a little over, a little under, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Come see, come saw.
Come see, come see. Yes.
We could even go ahead, since we're going to ask the same questions, when they come in, give them the 8 questions or
Yes.
whatever we're going to ask. So then, and say, you only have an hour
That's
to
right.
answer these questions. And so they can look and they can say, well.
You mean give
maybe-
them the questions in advance?
No,
No,
when
no,
they
no.
come in
When they
here
walk
and give
in
them
for
a
the
couple
interview.
of minutes to
Oh,
look at the
right.
questions, and then they'll decide, if,
If they want to emphasize one over another.
yeah.
All right.
So it doesn't, oh, wait a minute, I really wanted to talk more.
But the guy who's in the green room, he doesn't
He
get them in
doesn't get it.
advance.
Okay.
Okay,
When they come in,
then we get,
and
okay.
I would like, if, just in terms of the process, if we could be set up like we're set up for a study session. Okay, because this seems.
Otherwise, we're
this
such an
seems-
intimidating
yeah,
body.
Oh, yes.
It
It is,
weird.
this
No,
is
I
a very
agree.
weird setup for that kind of thing, so, okay?
All right.
All right, thank you.
So will you? Sorry, will you have the same agenda with call to order, pledge of allegiance, and then go right into interview? Is that the way you'll want it noticed?
It would seem like section 1 would be the same,
Mm-hmm.
and the only item on the agenda would be interviews.
Yes,
But then won't we be taking action?
Not that, no.
Not at that meeting?
No, that's after Linda resigns.
no, we have to, yeah, we can't,
But one of the
we can't
things
take
we
action
have-
until
So
Linda resigns.
It's just interviews and then adjournment?
Yeah. However, we may want a section 2 because we have committed to any time we meet to allow for public forum. That is something that we
So you need
have
public
previously
forum?
committed. Not that anyone would be there.
Well, maybe.
Well, then public forum should be
We could have
formed.
somebody come, and they might want to say why we should be
Well, they have that, because we've always, we don't have to, but
we
we've always
should,
had
yeah.
public
So
forum when we get together.
You'll have section 1, public forum, the interviews. Do you want board discussion after that?
No.
And
guys
then
want
just
it?
adjournment?
Adjournment.
Yeah, we can't
I
just,
I don't know about public forum. I don't want someone to get trashed by some anonymous person just showing up. I think that's
I'm
inappropriate.
fine not having it
Yeah, no public
No
forum.
public forum?
on this one, yeah.
Because that could get ugly and nasty,
Yeah, all right, cool.
considering the commercials I see coming out of Albuquerque. All right, guess what? We're down to oh, I'm sorry. All right. Oh, yes, and I do too.
Yeah, I have something that's not on board discussion, but for a future board meeting. PBS has been running for the past week, maybe 2 weeks, a series on the opioid epidemic, and last night they
Yes.
focused just on New Mexico. So, it's changed since, maybe when we were kids. But I was concerned when they were talking about, it was either a 3rd or a 4th grader, and he wasn't showing up for school because his parents were both using, and he still had to get his younger brothers and sisters.
Sisters up and
So
back.
I would just like to have sometime in the future, either a study session or just a briefing on what we're doing as far as opioid training or something. How are we dealing with our kids with this? Because I wouldn't be thinking that we would be talking to 3rd and 4th graders about it, but obviously we need to. So I don't know how we're reaching out to our kids anymore. Probably I'm more comfortable with what we're doing at a high school level or middle school level, but now that this is really such a significant problem in our communities, and maybe we're doing okay in Santa Fe, I don't know, but I think we would probably be just like the rest of the state, and the state is not doing well.
Board Member Carrillo.
I mean, I would say, if it's all right with Maureen, just a brief presentation from our wellness people as to how they're dealing with basically drug abuse in general. Because I don't think it really is, for Santa Fe County, as big of a, but when you start going into some of these adjacent counties.
Maybe not for Santa Fe proper, but I do know the county is having some significant
Yeah, when you get out to
problems.
those,
So,
yeah.
it
I
might
won't
not
name
be
names, I
Santa
don't
Fe
wanna-
Public School District, but the county, but maybe it's a bigger problem than what we're aware of. So if we could just get, just what are we doing?
I don't want a presentation on all of our drug policy. I want it to be specifically, for me personally, it would be
So
nice
can
to
we,
do it.
this is what the issue that I brought to you guys before, and don't get mad at me. But, we're trying to balance out, is this a request from the entire board? And, it's not on here for possible action.
Yeah, she just brings it up for us to
So
think
do you
about.
want us to put it on the next agenda? Well, but sometimes one of you wants something,
Yeah,
and not everybody wants us to do
it would be an action item because we're going to be asking your staff to do something. So could we put it on?
Put it on the next-
the next board discussion and possible action, just an
Yes.
update?
Is that
Because
okay?
I think
Yes.
it's important that we, as a
Thank you.
board, know what's happening.
Thank you.
And, and
Thank you.
you're right, before we task you to task your staff to do more work for us. But anyways, if you haven't seen the series, I'm sure it's going to be repeated, and it's well worth watching that series. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
I don't know if you all know, but the gentleman who was nominated by the president to be the head of the DEA withdrew today because it turns out that he introduced legislation to make it more difficult for the DEA to do the enforcement that they needed. So I just wanted to add that. Also, I would like to add, just for our future consideration, while we're going over strategic plans and things like that, I want us to look at this site-based budgeting. I'm not happy. I don't know how other people feel, but I'm not happy. There's certain things, and libraries, nurses, and counselors are very important to me, and it bothers me that a site can decide not to do some of these things. So I would just like us to have future conversations about this. it doesn't require any action on your part, Dr. Garcia, but it's something that we're going to have to think about, because we're also planning a budget. Board Member Carrillo.
I would imagine the best time to address that's in our next finance subcommittee
Yeah, that's why I
meeting.
said, because we're planning.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, we're planning a budget. I don't know how you all feel. Can I get a consensus? Are any of you concerned about this also? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Anybody in the room besides me from California?
My understanding is that California is ceasing to exist.
Well, because the thing you got to think about, and Lori knows this, governing by proposition. And so, I mean, I remember when Gray Davis was running for governor against Schwarzenegger, it was the first time around, you know, people were giving Gray Davis a really hard time for the budget. And what people don't realize is that in California, I think it's something like 4/5 of the budget is already predetermined by proposition. So when you want to blame a bunch of people, blame the voters, because they're the ones that, and that includes me, when I was there, they're the ones that approved all these propositions over the year.
Wasn't it started by Proposition 13?
Oh, that goes way back. Howard
Yeah.
Jarvis and all that mess. Yeah. So were you there then? Yeah. What a mess. You know, anyway, so we can get into a situation where when we tell folks you have to do this and this and this and this, then all of a sudden we look at our budget and we're stuck. You know, and then and we may not be, and at the same time we want to have the SACs really feel a sense of empowerment. And if the SACs are saying we don't really want this, this is not a priority for us in our community, but we've done, you know, we've said from on high, it's just an interest. It's a global way to have to look at when we start mandating. And in New Mexico, we all know, when they mandate, they never fund. You know, the legislature mandate this, this, and this, but don't give the public schools the money to do it. So anyway, just to think about in general.
Yes. Oh, yes. Moving on to advanced planning and a record-breaking school board. You just want to ruin my record.
Yeah, I do want to ruin your record. I just want to, for the people that are listening, I just want to remind everyone, tomorrow night, the candidates for District 4 will be having a community meeting and forum, and that's going to be over at the Nancy Rodriguez Community Center at 5:30. And then again, the candidates are going to be at Capitol High School Theater on Saturday at 10 o'clock. So if you're interested to hear what the two candidates that are running for the vacant or the soon-to-be vacant school board seating, that would be a good time for you to show up at those meetings, and we've notified the candidates to be there, I hope.
Yeah, both of the candidates will be there for the first community forum. One will be there for the second community forum. There was a request to move the meeting. I hope you don't mind, but I felt that that was just too difficult to do at this point, to change everyone's schedules now, and that it's up to the candidates to decide if they're going to be present for a forum or not. That was also when we ran. They had community forums, and we were not. It was not mandated that we be there. We decided on our own whether to be there or not. That's just an announcement. Anything else on advanced planning? Oh, yep.
Just to confirm, because I was a tiny bit confused, the audit committee has been canceled on Thursday.
Board President Price, Secretary Noble.
Everybody's forgetting my name tonight.
I don't know why
I'm seeing
your mother's so
blurry, actually.
famous.
There's a couple reasons. The biggest one was the auditor actually would have liked another day to be able to prepare a couple of the transactions that have come up in the interrelationships, particularly the Partners in Ed, actually. And so we rescheduled it till Friday afternoon, I think at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. I don't know what something's funny with my district email, but the agenda came in after the cancellation. So it was a little confusing.
Is it the new agenda? I mean, is it the agenda with the new date? Did Dina, because I noticed that she sent it out again with the new date. Is that what happened?
Any other discussion of advanced planning?
So the 24th study session is just being held as a placeholder, right?
That is correct.
If we need to learn about the building. Got it.
Okay. Okay, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So
Adjourn,
moved.
motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.